Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined this morning by Pat Fitzmaurice and Derek Brown. This will be our Friday show, regularly all season long, where we run through some key questions for every single matchup on the slate. We are already off the rails here a little before even starting to record this show, so it's going to be a fun one this morning. Guys, we're going to go through, as we always do, Sunday early afternoon slate, then the late afternoon slate, then the primetime games. And like I said, we're going to ask one key question for every matchup here, and we're going to break down this slate. It looks like a pretty good one to me. I actually saw some talk early in the week that there's not that many fun matchups. I disagree. I think there's a lot of fun matchups, so I am really looking forward to this weekend of football. Got started off on the right foot with Thursday Night Football and that really fun, high-scoring game. Let's go right in, and we're going to start with Packers at Falcons as our game number one. And my first question for you guys here is, can we start any Falcons pass catchers for the time being? And simultaneously, can we sit any Falcons running backs? Fitz, I'll start with you.
Well, I really don't want to start any Falcons pass catchers, and this from a person who is very heavily invested in Drake London this year, probably my most rostered player, but no, I kind of don't want to start London this week, and I do want to start Bijan and maybe even Algier this week against the Packers defense that I think is going to be kind of a run funnel all year. I mean, the Packers have a good pass defense, and we saw Jair Alexander cover DJ Moore a lot in week one and hold DJ Moore to 2 catches for 25 yards, and the Packers pass rush really got after Justin Fields last week. But the Packers aren't good against the run and haven't been for a while. So I do think it's a run defense you want to attack. And, I don't think Drake London gets untracked this week. Maybe wait for week 3 on him.
Yeah, obviously there's really only 4 players here to talk about, and Bijan is an obvious start. So it's really only the 3 of London and Pitts. Can you start them? And Algier, can you sit him? And I'm not sure that the answer isn't no, because he just looks so good, and we know they're going to run so much, right, Debra?
Yeah, I mean, look, right now I've got Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier both comfortably inside my top 30 running backs. If you have both of them on the same team, like if you went handcuff strategy, I mean, hell, you could fire both of them up this week. I mean,
do you feel like that
Smith
limits your ceiling at all when you're starting 2 running backs on the same team?
No, I mean, really, I don't think it is, because all you're saying is the story that you're telling yourself on that game is that, okay, the Falcons get all their production and touchdowns from the ground. And as Arthur Smith has told us, Drake London doesn't care if he gets 1 target, 2 targets, 0 targets. He's perfectly fine with run blocking the entire game. Isn't that right, Arthur? That's what I've been told. That's what I hear. So, no, I'm totally fine, and I don't think it limits your ceiling at all.
And are you at all considering starting either London or Pitts, Debra?
Yeah, I would start both of them in the same lineup, and I'm with Pat. We saw Jair follow DJ Moore on 55% of his routes. He held him to a goose egg 0. So any production DJ Moore had last week was outside of Jair's coverage. And I think the same thing is going to happen to Drake London this week. And it's sad to say, but what is to stop any defense from going into the week and saying, okay, we probably don't try to take away Kyle Pitts. They'll move around the formation. But if we take away Drake London and we just make this offense either have to beat us via the run or with the pass otherwise, I mean, just it's common sense, but it's happening. And I think it continues to happen.
This is the perfect opportunity to talk about this year's Fantasy Over-Under Challenge presented by Betting Pros. Each week, the guys will be making over-under picks for 10 different players for how many fantasy points we expect them to score. Submit your picks to play along with the guys so you don't miss out on the chance to win awesome prizes. One of this week's players is Kyle Pitts. His line is set at over-under 7.5 fantasy points. Again, Kyle Pitts, 7.5 fantasy points. Will he have a bounce back in week 2, or is he destined to never get any targets? Debra, what do you think?
I'll take the under. I know that line is begging for you to take the over, but the Packers have been good against tight ends. And just like I said, Arthur Smith hates to throw the ball, and it's not like Desmond Ridder is any good at it anyway.
Fitz, are you taking over or under 7.5 for Pitts?
I'm with Debro here. I'm going under. It's a pretty close line. But yeah, I'm just not wildly optimistic that the Falcons open it up and throw a lot this week.
He essentially has to score a touchdown to hit that line, and we've seen that when they're in close to the red zone, to the end zone rather, they're going to run the ball. So that makes it hard to predict something like that. Football is back in full swing with another week of epic games, and who's got you covered on the action for every single one of them? DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. New customers can bet $5 on football and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Nobody's missing out on the action this season. All DraftKings customers can take advantage of 2 new offers every game day this September. Get in on the NFL Week 2 action with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the app now and use code FantasyPros to sign up. New customers can bet just $5 and take home $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code FantasyPros. The crown is yours. Let's go to game number 2 here, guys. Raiders at Bills. And my question for you here, and we'll start with you, D-Bro. Are the Bills ready to bounce back from there, or rather maybe Josh Allen's struggles against the Jets?
Oh, Bills Mafia is not going to like what I'm about to say, but it's the truth. Josh Allen was not good versus zone last year, and I think this is another situation where he's going to face a lot of zone coverage, and I think he's going to have a rough game in this one. Now, can Josh Allen, and I'm going to be ranking him aggressively, yes, I'm not going to push him outside my top 5 quarterbacks because the rushing always matters, and he can make up in that department, but Josh Allen versus zone, and I think the Raiders are going to use a lot of zone because they did in week 1. But Allen versus zone last year, 27th in adjusted completion rate, 16th in passer rating, and 15th in CPOE on deep throws with a 10-10 passing to touchdown interception ratio. And it's not good, Bob. None of that is good. So I think the offense scores points, but I think it's going to be a lot of James Cook, a lot of checkdowns, because the Raiders are quietly terrible versus running backs in the passing game. But does that mean Josh Allen walks away with a really good passing day?
What do you make of Kincaid in this one, D-Bro?
I think Kincaid's going to be good. I mean, last week, he played a full-time role. It was basically the Bills lived in 12 personnel. And I also want to bring this up. When we say 12 personnel, like, people need to understand that this is not really a true 12 personnel in the sense that, okay, we got 2 tight ends, one's blocking. Both of those guys are running routes. Like, Knox and Kincaid both had over 58% in the slot. So, while yes, the Bills are running a lot of 12 personnel and these 2 guys are full-time players, you need to look at this as this is not one guy running routes and the other guy is down blocking. Both of these guys are just operating as receivers. So, they're taking turns on who's going to be the slot guy. It's just we need to understand positional ideas here.
Fitz, do you agree or disagree with D-Bro that Josh Allen might be in for another tough game?
Well, D-Bro makes some good points about the zone defense thing, and zone also kind of limits a quarterback's rushing potential because you play zone, you get to face the quarterback and not turn your back on him. So maybe some of those runs don't go for quite as many yards. But man, like Allen coming off that first week game, we know that the Jets defense is just a toxic matchup for quarterbacks. So I'm a little more optimistic about the Raiders. And look, I don't want the Bills Mafia showing up at my house with torches and pitchforks. I don't want to get
tables too. They always bring tables.
I don't want to get put through a table. So I'm going to say that Allen does bounce back at home against the Raiders.
So we're obviously starting Allen and we're obviously starting Diggs, but Fitz, Gabe Davis, are we starting him if you have a need at flex?
Yeah, I think so. We knew he was going to see a lot of sauce, Gardner last week, and he did. I mean, I bet the under on Gabe Davis's receiving yardage total last week, which was like at 42 or something like that. But I think he has a bounce back game.
Let's go to game number 3, Ravens at Bengals. And my question here is, which of these offenses is better poised to turn things around quickly after a sloppy for the Ravens or downright terrible for the Bengals week 1? D-Bro?
All right, well, you're not going to like this one, Worm, but I think it's going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. And Lou's defense for Cincinnati is fantastic. And I'm not saying that the Baltimore Ravens are going to absolutely struggle and do nothing in this game, but I think it's going to be a lot of Zay Flowers. And whether we see Mark Andrews play or not, I think the tight end position is going to get involved. But on the other side, I think this game is set up for Joe Burrow to have a bounce back in this whole Cincinnati offense, especially the passing attack too, because Baltimore utilized a lot of zone in week 1. Now Burrow versus zone coverage last year, 6th in passer rating. He had the most passing touchdowns versus zone coverage. So I think Burrow's going to have plenty of time in the pocket because I'm not really scared of the Baltimore Ravens pass rush. So if I got to take one of these offenses, I'm going to go Cincy.
Yeah, I actually tend to agree with you, Debro. So while I don't like it, I can't, tell you that you're wrong. What I really find fascinating about this matchup is the fact that I really think Mike Macdonald is the defensive coordinator that game plans against Joe Burrow best. And I think Lou Anarumo is the defensive coordinator that game plans against Lamar Jackson best. So it's kind of two elite quarterbacks going up against, in a way, their kryptonites, at least as far as defensive coordinators go. The Ravens are just so banged up. And I actually do trust their pass rush a little more than you do, not, wholly and completely. I do think it's better than you're giving them credit for, but I think the injuries are too much to overcome, which is why I was out at the Bengals. Pat, what do you think?
Well, first of all, I'm annoyed, Worm, because you mentioned Michael McDonald. Now I'm going to have Doobie Brothers songs stuck in my head all day. But so I am actually more concerned about the I'm more concerned about the Bengals. Like 142 yards of offense and 6 first downs in week 1. And the Ravens weren't great, but they averaged 4.6 yards per play in week 1, which, not ideal, but not terrible either. The Bengals averaged 2.6 yards per play in week 1, which was tied with the Giants for worst in the league and a full yard behind the next worst teams, the Cardinals and the Buccaneers. So, yeah, I'm pretty terrified. I know it was wet weather and that weighed into it a little bit, but the Bengals did not look ready for prime time in week 1.
Just give me a second while I Google who Michael McDonald, the musician, is, because I did not pick up on that reference.
You listen
I've
to
heard
Jim Croce.
Pat
How
is
can
not
you
gonna
not
let
know?
you live that down.
Jim Croce is my favorite artist, I will admit, and yes, he is several decades gone. But I've heard of the Doobie Brothers. I just couldn't have told you that Michael McDonald was the singer, I guess, for that band. According to Wikipedia.
I'll sit here and admit I did not know who that was either, but I was going to go along with it. So,
well, I'm trying to juggle.
Disown both of us.
I'm trying to juggle a couple things here. Our multi-league assistant makes juggling multiple fantasy leagues easier than ever. Head to fantasypros.com/myplaybook to get expert advice for all your teams in one spot, so you can dominate every league every week. Let's go to game number 4 here. Seahawks at Lions. And my question is one I think a lot of people will have, and it's, how will David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs split the workload in the Lions backfield? Fitz, what do you think?
I know Gibbs stakeholders don't want to hear this, but I'm worried that we see something that maybe is a little too close to the Jamal Williams, DeAndre Swift workload split from last year. Like, Gibbs is so explosive, and we saw in week 1 what a live wire that dude is with the ball in his hands. But I mean, I think the Lions want to pound the rock as much as possible. I think they're happy if they can give David Montgomery 20 or more carries. So, yeah, I mean, that's not ideal for the Gibbs investors, but I think they want to be run heavy with David Montgomery to whatever extent they can be.
Debra, what do you think?
I think it's going to be a week-to-week kind of thing. I mean, I said that all during draft season. I said people were too low on David Montgomery, and people are now freaking out because they were so high on Jahmyr Gibbs. And I'm the one preaching patience out here. And I think this week we're going to see the script flipped. I think that Seattle is an improved run defense. I know it's only 1 week, but you have two similar run game schemes in the sense that the Rams are utilizing a lot of gap runs this year, especially with Cam Akers. He didn't do anything. I think that you're looking at David Montgomery. Again, it's going to be a lot of gap runs for Detroit. And I think Jahmyr Gibbs, they're going to get him in space. I think this is a massive Jahmyr Gibbs game. I've got him ranked as an RB1 on the site right now. And this comes down to not only what he can do, putting him in space in the run game, but in the passing game, he's going to get fed this week. Because you have a Seattle pass defense that they were terrible versus pass-catching running backs last year. The year prior to that, legendarily bad. So, even if we go back to just last year, Seattle allowed the 10th most receptions, 5th most receiving yards, and the highest yards per reception to running backs. Tell me Ben Johnson doesn't know that already, and he's like, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have himself a day, baby.
So that's a compelling case, Dero. But let me ask you this: if you had to bet on just one of these guys to score a touchdown this week, who is it?
Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yep. Okay. Would it be Gibbs for you too, Fitz, or Montgomery, just given the usage?
I'm going to go with Montgomery. It's close though.
Yeah, I think I would probably go Montgomery as well, although you can definitely make the case for both. You guys both know how much I love going to see sports in person, and now that the NFL is back in full swing, I'm excited to get out to a game here in Denver. I haven't picked which matchup to attend yet this year, but I'm hoping the fans can reach out and let me know when I should go. Whichever matchup I choose, the best way to get tickets to any of these games is on Game Time, the official ticketing partner of FantasyPros Fantasy Football. For last-minute amazing deals on tickets to see your favorite football team this September. It's not December yet. I'm not wishing away the season. Download Game Time. And as you've heard us say before, it's not just football. Game Time has tickets to baseball games, concerts, and comedy shows across the country. Might be going to see Jerry Seinfeld live for the first time in my life, which I'm really excited about. That's going to be later this fall. So download the Game Time app and redeem code FANTASYPROS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the Game Time app and enter code FANTASYPROS, all one word, for $20 off. No matter where you live, get out and have some fun this week. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Let's go to game number 5 here. Colts at Texans. And I want to ask you guys, which young wide receiver tied to a rookie quarterback was a better value this draft season? Michael Pittman or Nico Collins? Fitz, starting with you.
I think it's Nico, because he was really cheap throughout draft season. Pittman was not cheap, and I thought he was overpriced, and I like Pittman as a player. I just think the Colts are going to be really run-heavy this season, and when we look back, we're going to see 37 pass attempts for Anthony Richardson in week 1 and say, wow, that was like his most pass-heavy game of the season. I mean, I think that'll be among his most pass-heavy games of the season. Like, most of the time, I doubt he's going to have like 30 pass attempts in a week. Like, I just think if what we saw from Shane Steichen as a play caller 2 years ago in Jalen Hurts' first season as a starter holds true for the Colts, we're going to see the Colts be really, really run heavy. And that could ratchet up when Jonathan Taylor comes back, if Jonathan Taylor does indeed come back once he gets off IR. But so I'm a little worried about the passing volume for Pittman, and that, a lot of people are going to be racing to get him in the lineups this week and, might be disappointed.
Yeah, I was with you during draft season. I have Pittman in 0 redraft leagues. I only have him in places I already had him in Dynasty because I just did not trust that Richardson was going to throw enough and accurately enough for him to be viable. I was proved wrong in week 1. I'm not sure how that will last going forward. Debro, you and I were all aboard the CJ Stroud train all offseason, and he didn't light the world on fire in week 1, but he looked like he belonged, and that means good things for Nico Collins, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's a slam dunk. If we're talking about, if you're walking out of week 1 and you look at the comparable volume for these guys, they got damn near the same amount of volume. Nico Collins got a 33% first read share. And he was near the top in air yards. And we're talking about it, and Pat and I wrote him up. You can pick him up off of the waiver wire in certain leagues. That makes this a slam dunk, and it's not even a close conversation. Similar volume, except I got one of these guys off of the waiver wire in some of my leagues. Yeah, the value is Nico Collins, and I'm going to sit here and piggyback on it and double down right now. I think he's going to have a fantastic week. I have him ranked aggressive. Well, I think is aggressively.
Is he ranked ahead of Michael Pittman for you?
Ooh, good question, Worm. Let me look.
So Nico's the better value, but is he the better start this week?
Funny enough, I updated ranks this morning. I have them right back to back, and I have Nico at wide receiver 28. I have Pittman at wide receiver 29. So yes, we're going Nico, baby.
Fitz, would you also start Nico over Pittman?
I've still got Pittman ranked a little higher this week.
I think that's reasonable. Let's go to game number 6 here. One of the most fun ones on the slate. I think most people would agree. Chiefs at Jaguars. I'm really, really excited for this game. I think it's going to be a really fun watch. I think the Chiefs are going to come out angry. I think the Jags were maybe even a little sloppier than I expected. I just have really high expectations for them this year. So I think week 2 is going to be awesome in this matchup. My question for you guys, who is the most startable Chiefs pass catcher? Not named Travis Kelce, of course. Debro, what do you think?
Now, I remember, I looked at this sheet, look at this question on the show sheet. Now, I got to ask, and I'm going to ask you this, Worm. Is that this week or the entire season? Are we just talking about encapsulating just for this game? Who am I going to start?
Right now in week 2.
Okay. I'll give you a twofer then. It's going to be Jerick McKinnon and MVS. And I almost threw up in my mouth just talking about MVS in the primer. So I get it, people, but you look at how these two guys match up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're terrible versus receiving running backs. Jarrett McKinnon did nothing last week. I think he has a really solid game in this one. So if you're in PPR leagues, you're struggling for a flex, throw him in there. But MVS, if you need ceiling this week, Jacksonville quietly was terrible versus deep balls last year. Like, we're talking about a defense that was bottom 5 in both completion rates and everything you look at. And MVS, again, I'm not telling you the guy can actually catch passes well. He's got frying pans for hands, but when he does come down with them, they're going to be deep passes, and I think that happens this week. So give me the two, maybe the unsexiest guys in this offense. I'll go with McKinnon and MVS.
So I'll give you, we don't have a lot of time. I will give you 10 seconds. Who's the rest of season one that you would have said?
Oh, crap. Rashee Rice. Because he showed the most in week 1, and Sky might be dead. It's sad.
Very sad. Fitz, for this week, who are you starting if you have to start a non-Travis Kelce pass catcher in this offense?
Boy, Debra, I hope you didn't get bruised up jumping off the Sky Moore bandwagon as it was going full speed down the road.
It ran me over in week 1, Fitz. I'm still licking my wounds, okay?
All right. So I guess I have to be the guy driving the Sky Moore bandwagon. Look, like, I cannot in good conscience, like, recommend MVS to anyone. This dude has played with Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes.
Says the Packers fan.
And
so we'll just throw that in there.
And has been a terrible percentage play for fantasy football throughout his career. Yeah, he's going to have some games where he hits on the big play, but those games are far too few and far in between. So look, Sky Moore's usage was still pretty good. Like, he played a lot of snaps and ran a lot of routes in week 1. No catches. Yes, good receivers get skunked. And we saw with T. Higgins and Drake London in week 1. I'm not saying Sky Moore's a good receiver yet, but the training camp buzz on him was pretty good all along. The usage has been encouraging, like how they've used him in the preseason, how they used him in week 1. And in fairness, he did, I believe, have 1 catch negated by a penalty in week 1. So, like, I'm not totally giving up on him, not really eager to start Sky Moore this week, but I do think he is the best bet of the Kansas City pass catchers not named Travis Kelce.
So normally we're only going to do one key question here. I thought this matchup was just too juicy, so I'm going to cheat and sneak in a second question on the Jags side of things, which is, if we redrafted today, knowing what we know now after week 1, Calvin Ridley would be wide receiver what? I just think we cannot avoid talking about him. He was such a lightning rod player kind of in the offseason, as, you know, getting up to round 2 in some drafts. Some guys got him as late as round 4. But obviously we knew the upside was there. We saw it, especially in that first half in week 1. So, Debro, Calvin Ridley, wide receiver what if we redrafted today?
Wide receiver 4, immediately behind Jefferson, Chase, and Hill. And shake your head all you want, Fitz. Tell me why not. He basically, like, Calvin Ridley was the Stephon Diggs in this offense. He was discount Stephon Diggs all draft season. He's going to get a 30% target share. He's going to get fed by Trevor Lawrence, who's one of the best quarterbacks in the game. Tell me why not, Fitz?
Because he's the discount Stephon Diggs, Debro. He's not the real Stephon Diggs. I would rather... I've got him wide receiver 10 rest of season.
Wow.
Behind Jefferson, Hill, Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Adams, and Chris Olave. And I think maybe Ridley's in a tie with Devontae Smith.
I've got him wide receiver 4 rest of season, just like I talked about in draft season.
Wow. So. Yeah, I mean, that's the real question was, would he be rusty? And he certainly looked like he had shaken off the rust in week 1. So
there was no rust.
Not a whole lot of questions to be asked about, really. That was a really impressive first week back. I'm so excited for this offense this year. Debro, of course, handles the primer every single week of the season, so you guys should go check that out on the website. But I also wanted to mention that with my primer, and I don't mean mine, I mean the tool is called My Primer, you can get a personalized view of the primer tailor-made to your specific fantasy team. All you have to do is head to fantasypros.com/myplaybook and quickly sync your team for our in-depth advice specifically on all of your players. It's a really fun and convenient tool, especially if you have a lot of different teams. Let's go to game number 7 here, guys. Bears at Buccaneers. I'm a little less excited for this one than I was for Chiefs Jags. My key question here is, are we giving DJ Moore another chance, or has Darnell Mooney maybe surpassed him, Debro?
No. and this is not me hating on Darnell Mooney, but I already talked about him and illuminated this earlier on the show. Jair Alexander following DJ Moore on 55% of his routes. He erased him last week. We are going to see DJ Moore bust out this week. And I'm not telling you that Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean are bad corners. Not at all. But the last time that we saw DJ Moore versus this pass defense, 10 targets, he had 116 receiving yards. And this was done while Jamel Dean was following him on 70% of routes. He caught 2 or 3 targets for 60 yards in that coverage. And I don't even know if Dean is going to follow him this week. It's possible, but I think it's a matchup that DJ Moore can win. So I'm going to have exposure on DJ Moore and Justin Fields in my DFS lineups. And I think they're set up for a good bounce back game here.
Fitz, we've been burned by DJ Moore in past seasons. We were kind of burned by him in week 1, or at least I was. Are you giving him another chance here in week 2?
Absolutely. Davis and Dean, pretty good corners, but they are not human blankets like Jair Alexander. And DJ Moore and Justin Fields were in sync throughout training camp in the preseason. I think DJ Moore goes right back to being the main target for Justin Fields, and he's going to have a good week.
Let's go to game number 8 here, Chargers at Titans. And I'm not sure if I've missed any updates here as of the time we're recording on Friday morning on Austin Eckler, but my question is, Joshua Kelly isn't an RB1 if Austin Eckler sits, or is he, Fitz?
I don't think he is. I think Josh Kelly is kind of a pedestrian talent, and he's going up against a pretty good Tennessee run defense. So I'm not optimistic that he has a smash game, even if Eckler's out. I'm probably going to have him ranked as a low-end running back 2.
Yeah, I ignored the matchup for Jamal Williams last week. I was all in on him, and going up against that Titans defense, they know how to stop the run, and they certainly did a good job of making him extremely inefficient. Debro, Joshua Kelly, where are you ranking him if Austin Eckler doesn't play?
I'm projecting Austin Eckler to be out in this game, and the same thing that I said last week, and I said Derek Carr is going to light up the Titans, I'm going to say it again this week. I think that when we saw the Chargers last week lean into the run game, I'm old enough to remember, guys, when the Cowboys played the Buccaneers and Dak came out and threw the ball like basically every freaking play. And we're like, well, that's really smart. There's an elite run defense on the other side with the Buccaneers. Yes, you should lean into the pass game. That's going to happen this week. Justin Herbert is going to come out and have himself a freaking day. They're not going to worry about throwing the ball because Tennessee has an elite run defense, and it matches up really well with what Josh Kelly does. 68% of his runs last week were on gap design runs. Tennessee versus gap runs in week 1, 2.0 yards per carry allowed. Joshua Kelly, I think, is an RB2 because of volume. And really, you're hoping for a touchdown because, again, I think the Chargers are going to be in the red zone early and often. So he sucks out probably with a touchdown. But as far as like efficiency, not going to happen. Kelly's an RB2.
Yeah, you could probably have gotten your answer listening to that by the fact that I asked about Joshua Kelly, and Debro started off by talking about Justin Herbert, which just tells you how we think this game is going to go. Much more in his favor than Kelly's. Take the stress out of lineup management with My Playbook's autopilot tool at fantasypros.com/myplaybook. Enjoy automated optimal lineup adjustments, giving you both peace of mind and the best shot at victory every week. So check out Autopilot if you need a little help setting your lineup. Let's go to the Sunday late afternoon slate, guys. Game number 9 here. Giants at Cardinals. My question is, the Giants will obviously be better in week 2 than they were in week 1. It would be pretty much impossible to be worse. But was their horrific first game enough to scare you off of starting any Giants against a bad Cardinals team? Or are you going back to the well if you have them on your team, Pat?
Well, no, it's not scaring me away from the Giants, but there were only 3 Giants I would consider playing anyway. Danny Dimes, Saquon Barkley, Darren Waller. That's it. I'm not ready to, wade into the swamp that is the New York Giants receiving core just yet. So, look, going from Dallas to Arizona, big difference in matchup. Dallas is just a skull and crossbones matchup for quarterbacks and wide receivers this year, and it's going to be like that all year. So, a much softer opponent this week, and I think Danny Dimes and Saquon and Waller are going to bounce back. Well, Waller, if he can make it through the game. Debro already dealing with an injury. Who could have seen that coming?
Oh, gosh. Don't start, Fitz. My pain is still real on that, okay?
Debro, what do you think? Are you going back to the well with the Giants? And if you are you even ranking them maybe aggressively coming off of that bad week 1?
I'm going to be updating ranks later today. I am going to have probably Darius Slayton and Paris Campbell a little bit above consensus, especially Darius Slayton. The corners for Arizona are not anything that I need to worry about, and Arizona was bottom 10 in pressure rate, so I think we're going to see a totally different kind of week for Daniel Jones in this passing attack. And I think if anything, the Cardinals, if we're going to say they do anything well on defense, they actually kind of surprised me and look like a little bit better run defense. Now, maybe that's a lot of the Commanders not being able to run the ball, but we'll see it as the season kind of moves along. But this is all to say that, yes, I still have confidence in the Giants passing attack. I'm going to have Waller as the top 3 tight end. I have Daniel Jones inside my top 15 quarterbacks for the week. And if you're looking for a flex play, and again, this is probably more desperation, but I think one of Darius Slayton or Paris Campbell has a good game. And if I got to pick one, it's going to be Darius Slayton. So fire him up if you need an upside flex play.
Pat, I'm not going to ask you to pick a Giants wide receiver because I'm not cruel, but I wonder, obviously Saquon, everybody's, would start him. That's obvious. And same with Waller, given where he was drafted and, the position at landscape at tight end. So I just want to ask you, Fitz, on Daniel Jones. Is he somebody that you're starting this week, or is that more for just super flex leagues?
No, I'd start him. I think I have him ranked inside quarterback 1 range this week. I mean, he runs, and he's going to be able to do business through the air this week, unlike last week against Dallas.
We're going to go to game number 10 here, 49ers at Rams, and I put together this show sheet before the surprising news came out on Thursday night that Puka Nacua did not practice because of the oblique issue. But my question is, so let's assume that he plays and we get a clean bill of health here. Is Puka Nacua a must start for as long as Cooper Kupp is sidelined? We could not have a show without talking about Puka Nacua here. So, Debro, since he is your guy, I will let you start.
Yep, I'm going to sit here and say as long as we can assume health, I've got Puka Nacua ranked at wide receiver 26 this week. And people could say, that's a little bit aggressive. And my pushback is, you saw 15 targets, right? Did you miss week 1? You saw that he got a 39% target share. You saw also that he got a 42% first read target share. So tell me how ranking him as a wide receiver 3 is really aggressive. I'm not putting him as a wide receiver 2, but if you have him on your team, you spent the fab. If he's healthy walking into this week, damn right I'm starting Puka Nacua.
I think it is aggressive, but aggressive doesn't mean wrong. And so I think you can make a good case for why you should be aggressive, but I think that's a reasonable descriptor of a guy that went so late or not even drafted in most leagues, already being borderline back end wide receiver 2 range. Fitz, what do you think? Is Nacua a must start as long as Kupp is sidelined?
Yeah, I think mostly. I mean, we have certain leagues where maybe he's not quite a must start, a 10-team league where you only have to start 2 wide receivers, and maybe he falls outside the must start zone. But I have him ranked wide receiver 32. That puts him ahead of guys like some of the guys we talked about earlier, Drake London, Michael Pittman, Nico Collins. I'm starting Puka over those guys. He's pretty essential to this offense now that they have no Cooper Kupp. And look who they're going against, the 49ers. Out of necessity, kind of a pass funnel defense. The Rams aren't going to be able to run on the 49ers. It's just not happening. So they're going to throw a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Puka get double-digit targets again if he's healthy enough to play.
Fitz, I got a question real fast. Sure. I got these guys back-to-back. High total game, everybody's low on him. Who are you starting, Puka Nacua or Christian Kirk? It's tough, man. That's why I want to bring it up, because I think people are going to face that challenge.
Yeah, I've got Kirk right now, wide receiver 32 spots higher, and I don't like that Kirk isn't playing in 2 wide receiver sets, but I do think it's going to be a really souped-up game script for the Jaguars, and they're going to have to throw a lot to keep up with the Chiefs.
Yeah, I could see both sides of the coin. That's why I'm asking the question, because again, while I'm sitting here going through ranks, I'm struggling as well, trying to figure out what the hell I'm going to do with these 2 guys for the week.
I think I would probably go Puka there. Also, let's just all give ourselves a pat on the back for not saying Puka juice during that whole segment. That was really impressive by you guys. So nicely done. Before we move off this game, let's talk about another player in the Betting Pros over-under challenge. Brandon Aiyuk absolutely went off in week 1 against the Steelers. Do we think it happens again, or at least that he has another good game? His line is set at just 12 fantasy points. Debro?
I'm going to take the under. Talked about this on Must Start, Must Sit show, so people need to check that out. But I think it's going to be a full bore Deebo Samuel game. So give me the under for Aiyuk.
Pat, Brandon Aiyuk, 12 fantasy points, over or under?
Over. The Rams cornerbacks are not good. Like, I think he's going to smash this.
Aiyuk's another guy, actually, I want to quickly ask, similar to Calvin Ridley, rest of season, where are we ranking him at wide receiver? I know it was only one game, but he looked really, really good, Fitz.
He's really good.
Like maybe low-end wide receiver too, but I'm prepared to slide him up. And we got reports throughout 49ers training camp that he was the best player for the Niners in training camp on either side of the ball. Like, he is legit, man.
No, I was told by consensus that there's no way that you could ever say that Brandon Aiyuk is better than Deebo Samuel, Pat. Like, that he's not that good, even though he was top 10 in open score last year. Like, there's no way. Can't be that good. Just to throw this in here, I've got Brandon Aiyuk as my wide receiver 16 for rest of season ranks.
I think that's a pretty reasonable range, honestly. Let's go to our next game. Jets at Cowboys, a couple of elite defenses in this one. My key question, I think it's, again, going to be one that a lot of people are asking, but what is our trust level in Garrett Wilson for as long as Zach Wilson is his quarterback? D-Bro?
None. 0. Sorry.
0 out of 10.
Zilch. Like, oh, God. 3.
Wow.
Which could sound like an overreaction unless you've actually watched Zach Wilson play football. And then you realize it's really not. It really is not. So as long as Zach Wilson's starting, I saw this out on social media and I adamantly agree with it. So shout out, I think it was Jacob Gibbs that put this out there and I back it up adamantly. I would be starting Puka Nacua over Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's probably going to be low-end wide receiver 3 territory for me this week. Like, we just saw what happened to the Giants. Do we think anything different is coming for the Jets when they face this Dallas defense? Good Lord.
It's just crazy to think, like, of all the stuff, the time and effort and research we put into draft season in August, and then already week 2, we're starting Puka Nacua over Garrett Wilson. Fitz, what say you?
Yeah, I really sympathize with the Garrett Wilson investors. Like, I didn't have him just because I sort of had him at the tail end of wide receiver 1 range in draft season. But a lot of people were willing to take him ahead of Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, A.J. Brown. So, yeah, those people got really hurt by the Aaron Rodgers injury, obviously. But do not abandon all hope. Garrett Wilson had 1,100 yards last year, catching passes from Zach Wilson, Mike White, Joe Flacco. Obviously, the ceiling is lowered. 100-catch season, a double-digit touchdown season. Those dreams are off the table now. But I still think you're going to start Garrett Wilson most weeks. Maybe just not with the expectation you had beforehand. But I'm still going to be ranking him as like a low-end, maybe even mid-range wide receiver 2 most weeks. Just not this week against Dallas. Not a great matchup, obviously.
Let's hit one more player in the Betting Pros over-under challenge. Garrett Wilson's over-under is set at 11 fantasy points in week 2. I'm assuming you guys are both going under.
Yeah.
That's
wow. That's like the easiest slam under ever. Like,
under.
That's assuming right now that he probably scores a touchdown in that line. Which,
I mean, he's going to have to.
How
There's
you going to make that
getting...
assumption? I don't know.
Yeah. You would need a Dallas cornerback to slip on a banana peel for that to happen, I think. Yes.
Forget he was going to play that play? Yeah.
Let's let me throw you another over-under that I just made up. Over-under Jets 3.5 points in this game.
Oh.
I mean, I'd take the over just on their defense alone.
Yeah, I'll take the over. Now,
that's the best shot they have is scoring with their defense, not with against this Cowboys defense.
If you would have set the line at like 10.5, Worm, I think that would be like give them a touchdown and a field goal just because of the running game, and maybe the defense gives them a short porch. I probably would take the under on 10 points, but that's about where I think the line is.
Yeah. I mean, 3.5 is obviously hyperbolic, but the Cowboys did just give up 0 a week ago, and the Jets now have the worst quarterback in football. Like, it's big yikes. Let's do the last late afternoon game here. Commanders at Broncos. My key question, is Jahan Dotson, Javonte Williams, Cortland Sutton, Brian Robinson, and Terry McLaurin are all ranked in a glom between 50 and 62 overall in our half PPR expert consensus flex rankings. Again, that's Dotson, Javonte, Cortland Sutton, Brian Robinson, and Terry McLaurin. They're all within a dozen spots of each other in our flex rankings. So how many of those guys would you actually be confident in starting this week, Fitz?
None of them are real comfortable starts, but I would say the most uncomfortable starts from that group would be Sutton and McLaurin for me. And with Sutton, it's Jerry Jeudy coming back into the fold, which jeopardizes Sutton's target share in a passing offense that still isn't clicking just yet. And with McLaurin, he's still dealing with a turf toe injury, 2 catches for 31 yards in week 1, and now he's going to get a lot of face time with Patrick Surtain Jr., which is never a good thing for a wide receiver.
Yeah, he's really good. D-Bro, I'll read those names one more time. Dotson, Javonte, Sutton, Brian Robinson, and Terry McLaurin.
I'm going to go with none of the above except for Jahan Dotson. This is a really good Commanders run defense. This is a really good pass defense for Denver. Yes, Surtain is going to be in Terry McLaurin's back pocket all day. So that only leads me to Dotson. I think he's going to get DeMario Mathis and Erickson hit the nail on the head on this on our start-sit show. You're telling me that Dotson's going to maybe get 70% of routes versus Mathis, who Jacoby Myers cooked for 68 receiving yards and 2 scores last week, that Dotson can't do the same thing? I'm going to be ranking Dotson aggressively on the site. I want to make sure I am above consensus on his ranking, but the rest of them, consider me at or below consensus. I don't want to start any of those guys.
Fitz, very quickly before we move on, Javonte Williams, what did you make of the workload we saw out of him in his first game back from that knee injury?
Interesting. I mean, we saw Breece Hall and Javonte Williams, get not like a ton of work, but like maybe more than we were expecting. And it helps when you are coming back from a major knee injury if you are young and athletic, as both of those guys are. So maybe we should have given them a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt during draft season.
Oh, to be young and athletic. What a time. Let's go to Sunday night.
That doesn't describe any one of us on this show.
No. Let's go to Sunday Night Football. Dolphins at Patriots, AFC East matchup here. My key question is, are we overreacting to his unbelievable week 1 by putting Tyreek Hill as wide receiver 1 this week? And note that we kind of put this together again before seeing Justin Jefferson on Thursday Night Football. But you guys both had Tyreek Hill as wide receiver 1 even before seeing anything Justin Jefferson did last night. Is that an overreaction to his sensational week 1, D-Bro?
I had Tyreek Hill as my wide receiver 1 of the week. He is going to remain my wide receiver 1 of the week. Does not matter. I think he's going to have a better game than Jefferson had. And I know that's saying a lot, but it's not saying a ton if you watch what Tyreek Hill did against man coverage in week 1, and he is going to destroy the Patriots man coverage in week 2. I talked about this out on Twitter, and I'm going to say it again here, is that Tyreek Hill is their man coverage option. The difference between his target share and Jalen Waddle's versus man coverage is ridiculous. I mean, it is ridiculous. A massive cavern between those two players. So I think Tyreek Hill comes out, and I'm not going to tell you he's going to go for 200 freaking receiving yards, but is he going to go for 100 plus? Absolutely in this game. And so I'm not worried about Tyreek Hill. I'm going to keep ranking him aggressively, and he's going to keep destroying man coverage.
I mean, you did just say he's going to have a better game than Jefferson, who had 11 catches for 159 yards in the Thursday game, D-Bro.
I mean, so Tyreek Hill goes for over that. I mean, I don't think that's a crazy bet to make. It's going to happen.
Fitz, knowing what you know now about what Jefferson did last night, would you still keep Hill in wide receiver 1 like D-Bro would?
No, I think I'd probably cash in on Jefferson, but like these guys are 1A and 1B this week, whichever order you want to put them in. And I think the only thing that would slow Tyreek Hill down would be very inclement New England weather. Like, that's it.
Would you guys put Hill above Chase rest of season just based off this week 1? Or because Chase was the consensus, it was Jefferson and Chase went 1 and 2 in almost every draft.
I've moved Hill ahead of Chase in rest of season. Yep. Like, I was terrified by what I saw from the Bengals offense in week 1.
Yep. I've got Tyreek Hill at wide receiver 2. I got Chase at wide receiver 3 for rest of season rankings. I mean, this is all, and I'm not trying to double down here, guys, but I did say, like, before the season started, my bold take, and maybe it doesn't look so bold now, is that Tyreek Hill breaks the single season receiving yardage record. He's on his way to doing that. I still firmly believe it's going to happen.
He's certainly on pace. Let's go to Monday Night Football. We actually have 2 Monday Night Football games here in week 2. They usually do that in week 1, but for some reason they did it in week 2. We'll start with Saints at Panthers, NFC South matchup. And my key question here is Jamal Williams and Miles Sanders, as of yesterday, were both back-to-back in both of your guys' half PPR running back rankings for this week. So I want you guys to make the case for starting one guy over the other. And Debra, I'll start with you.
I'm going to go with Jamal Williams. I've got him at RB17. I could actually bump him a little bit higher. Again, I know that week 1 was not a good showing. He got all the work. He played 75% of the snaps. But if you were reading anything that, like, of note, especially the primer and stuff, or listening to anybody on this show, like, we were all said, like, Jamal Williams is probably going to have a rough day. Tennessee's run defense is really good. And I'm not telling you that Carolina's is a total pushover, but in week 1, they had the 14th lowest stuff rate. They allowed the 4th highest yards after contact per attempt. And they were also terrible versus gap runs. 2nd highest yards per carry. And that was 55% of Jamal Williams' run type in week 1. So I think Williams is going to get 20-plus touches. I think he probably scores in this game. So give me Jamal Williams over Miles.
Pat, they're also back-to-back in your rankings. Are you agreeing with Jamal Williams having the slight advantage here, or would you take Miles Sanders?
I get about 30,000 start-sit questions on Sundays that I answer, and inevitably I will
take the over for that, Fitz. Yeah. I think you're probably, that's probably lowballing that, to be honest.
So it's inevitable that I am going to get at least one Miles Sanders versus Jamal Williams question, and I will tell the questioner to flip a coin here. Like, I cannot make any sort of passionate case for one over the other. Like, I think Sanders is the better player. I think Williams is going to have a safe and substantial workload with Alvin Kamara still suspended and Kendre Miller just coming back from a hamstring injury. So it's just a deadlock for me. I can't break it.
Pat, what if that was a two-face type of double-sided Jamal Williams coin? What do you think about that?
As somebody who is very much all in on Jamal Williams, like I said earlier in the show, in week 1, I'm certainly hoping to see him have a more efficient week 2, or at least get in the end zone here. Let's go to game number 15, last on the slate. Browns at Steelers, another divisional matchup, AFC North here. And I want to ask you guys, after completely dismantling the Bengals in week 1, is the Browns defense elite enough to scare you away from playing any Steelers this week? Fitz?
The Browns' pass defense is legit, so I definitely don't want to get Kenny Pickett into my lineups this week. And I'm a little wary of George Pickens, too. Like, I don't know if the Deontay Johnson injury necessarily spikes Pickens' fantasy value. I don't know that there's going to be a big target spillover to Pickens as a result of Deontay being hurt, but I'm still very willing to play Najee Harris. I'm actually going to be starting Jalen Warren in the Scott Fishbowl this week, since I kind of cut corners at my RB2 spot. Browns gave up the 5th most rushing yards to running backs and the 6th most fantasy points to running backs last season. And Najee had 2 pretty good games against the Browns. So I think you're fine starting Pittsburgh running backs. I just don't really want to start components of the passing game, although I'd probably be willing to start Patty Freiermuth.
Yeah, Debro, on the Thursday show, the Start Sit show, you had George Pickens as a sit this week, so we know you're kind of out on him. How about the rest of the Steelers offense?
I'm with Pat on Najee and Jalen Warren. I'm probably going to try to have both of those guys above consensus because the Browns' run defense, now, I'm really kind of curious, are they going to be that type of run defense all year? Because they remade this entire defensive line. They brought in Shelby Harris, they brought in Dalvin Tomlinson and Zadarius Smith. So I think as that entire defensive line gels, I think they are going to morph into one of the top run defenses in the NFL. Does that happen in week 2? I think it's totally, like Pat was talking about, a coin flip. And if that's the case, I will use the data that we have from week 1, where we saw the Browns allow the 3rd highest missed tackle and yards after contact per attempt. So I think that Najee and Jalen Warren have really good games. And you can count me out on every part of this passing attack for Pittsburgh. Like, Cleveland's corners are amazing. They run a lot of zone coverage. George Pickens is garbage versus zone coverage. So if Pittsburgh wants to have any chance in this game, it's going to be a heavy dose of the run game, and it's going to be their defense is going to have to step up.
We have a minute here before we wrap up, so I want to ask you guys just on the other side of this quickly. Deshaun Watson, obviously another kind of hot button player all offseason. We talked about, elite players don't forget how to be elite, but he looked so bad last year. What did you make of his performance in this one? Because I know there was some weather involved. It was an odd game, and just in terms of the Browns being up by so much and, again, so thoroughly dominating, with their defense. But what did we make of Deshaun in this one, D-Bro?
I said it, like Erickson was pounding the table for elite players don't forget how to be elite. And I was like, this guy looked terrible last year. I think that if we're going to toss on the rust factor for anybody, it should be with Deshaun Watson. He looked god-awful last year, and he did not look good. And everybody, and that's the narrative that I keep hearing, Worm, is that, well, it was the weather. Okay, please tell me in the AFC North in Cleveland, as it gets colder as we move through into the winter, is that weather going to improve? Are people just going to keep using that narrative every single week? Well, Deshaun looked pretty rough, but you know what? It was the rain. It was the 10-mile-an-hour wind that threw him off. Next week, they play in the Dome. Going to be a lot better, smooth sailing. I don't see it happening, man. And Deshaun Watson, last week, he was 17th in passing grade. He had the 10th lowest yards per attempt. So we could talk about game script and we could talk about all these different things and the weather being a factor. He played bad. And honestly, it didn't look that much different than what we saw last season. And we talked about training camp narratives earlier. Didn't we hear in training camp that basically when Deshaun was asked to sit there and throw from the pocket, he looked pedestrian at best? What have we seen both last year and this year to change that idea? Nothing. So no, you can count me out on Deshaun Watson.
Pat, what do you think about Deshaun quickly?
Mixed bag. Like the passing, not impressive at all. And I think he is at best like an average NFL passer, and that might even be a stretch. But I was somewhat encouraged by how aggressively he ran in that game, which I think is going to prop up his floor in fantasy. And one quick aside, like this is sort of a tangent, but maybe some of our listeners will find this helpful when they're setting lineups. I was talking to a Cleveland season ticket holder in the offseason, and they were telling me that you don't really appreciate on TV what a wind tunnel that stadium is. And it just kind of makes me not want to start quarterbacks playing in Browns home games. After hearing this person talk about how fiercely the wind can blow in that game. So maybe the weather did factor into it. It was wet. Was that game? I forget. Was that game in Cleveland or Cincinnati last?
That game was in Cleveland.
I believe it was Cleveland.
Yeah, it was a home game.
Yeah, so maybe
that was... I remember thinking to myself, Amari Cooper narratives. That's the only reason I know.
Maybe that was a factor, but I just like Deshaun has not shown enough signs of life as a passer for us to think that's coming back to, elite or above average status.
Everybody, please go check out the DraftKings Sportsbook. Go buy your tickets on Game Time, and go check out my playbook for all the awesome tools we have to offer. This is the time of year where you can really take advantage of all of our suite of tools. For Debro and Fitz, I am Ryan Wormeli. We will see you guys again next time.